Okay, good afternoon, everyone. How's it going? So, pulling up our presentation here. All right. Today, we're going to examine some critical or essential compliance requirements regularly applicable to government proposals. When it comes to the world of government contracting, the ultimate theme or uniformly held priority is compliance, right? Compliance, compliance. Compliance is the name of the game at every stage of government procurement. Compliance requirements are critical for contractors to understand, not just when competing for and bidding on contracts, but also when performing on awarded opportunities after the fact, right? And so that's why every successful contractor knows that they need to stay on top of government compliance requirements because doing so is not optional. If you want to seriously compete for government opportunities and awards, you need to accept the fact that compliance is a non-negotiable term. It's a prerequisite to your success and profit. So I want to take a serious and honest look at this subject for a few minutes here today. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so just to set some groundwork here, I want to preface this discussion with some notes, generally speaking, on compliance. Of course, we know that failure to meet compliance requirements for a given contract opportunity can result in disqualification from award. When actively performing on a contract, non-compliance can result in added fees to the contractor, and depending on the level of grievance, a contractor may be debarred from doing work with the government. So again, a very serious matter when it comes to contracting when you're bidding on awards and then performing on live contracts. Okay. So to offer you some further context all around, you may wish to know that the motivation behind compliance requirements in government contracts is primarily fairness and transparency, right? That's the idea. Government agencies utilize and abide by different requirements, guidelines, and regulations in their procurement process so that in theory there is fair competition in the market between vendors and there is clear visibility in how agency funds are being obligated or spent. And the motivation for these conditions of fairness, of transparency, right there, what resulted in the creation of the FAR and the DFARS compliance frameworks, which you may have heard before, right? So we have the FAR right here and the DFARS, Federal Acquisition Regulations. These, in combination with agency-specific guidelines, are what inform the various compliance requirements you encounter and will encounter and need to satisfy in your contracting pursuit. So you will see any unique combination of these three right here for every opportunity you're looking to bid on. And then your goal for every opportunity that you do bid is to strictly meet or satisfy whatever compliance requirements are cited as applicable so that your final bid or proposal and just all around your offer are eligible for final selection and award, right? So it should be your goal to 100% satisfy, make that a priority, whatever compliance requirements exist for the opportunity so that your offer is valid. And again, like I said, eligible for final selection and award. Okay, so the subject of compliance is a huge one. There are so many subtopics we could explore and dive into, and honestly, we probably will continue deeper in future videos. We could examine the FAR or DFARS in greater detail or discuss techniques or processes for how to track your compliance. But today we're going to focus on specifically what are the key or more common areas or points of your proposal that will be impacted or dictated by these compliance requirements. And I want to start here because I feel like, especially for those of you contractors who maybe are just getting started or are newer in the government space, looking at what proposal elements are most directly affected by compliance requirements will be a really good kind of preparatory discussion for you getting started. And that's what I'm always trying to do, right, is prepare and educate. So let's jump in here with our key compliance areas for your proposals and offers to the government, these key areas that will be affected by these requirements. First up, we're going to address what I think are the easiest compliance requirements to follow and also simultaneously the most across the board applicable, right? The ones that you'll see most often. And that's registration and certification requirements. So let's pull up number one here. For any government opportunity, it is an essential prerequisite that your business is registered in sam.gov. And then for federal contracts in particular, your business also needs to have that unique entity identifier, or that UEI number. So always make sure your business registration is active and visible on that platform. You also want to verify that you have whatever additional certifications that apply to the given contract. So that could be an 8A certification, or maybe a veteran-owned small business certification, right? There are several different set-asides to consider, several different socioeconomic categories. If you see in the solicitation package that any of these certifications apply to the opportunity, you need to ensure your business meets and holds whatever certifications, right, prior to submitting your offer. So again, these registration and certification requirements, they apply at varying degrees to all government contract opportunities. So make meeting them a second nature habit, so to speak. I can only imagine the damage that it does to your credibility as a contractor for a given agency if you submit an offer overlooking these requirements, because again, they are, in my experience, the most basic and easiest to satisfy. So not a good look for you to fail to meet them, right? Always take note of the registration and certification compliance requirements, and ensure that you have them attended to, those boxes checked. Next up are proposal formatting and submission requirements. Every solicitation has specified submission requirements. It'll specify not just when, but how to submit your offer. So that may be, a simple time and date, but they can get more complex, right? You may have to submit through a particular portal that you need to register with in advance, or perhaps submission is required via email with a certain nomenclature in the subject of the email. Or you may need to submit in advance a notice of intent, right? Or notice of your intention to bid, one of those letters. I've seen a wide array of submission requirements, so know that they're critical to follow, but they're not always predictable either. So they're important to pay attention to and take note of. Then, of course, nearly every solicitation has its own formatting requirements for the specific industry responses. So the level and extent of formatting requirements, they typically depend on the contract's size and scope, but especially for those exceeding the simplified acquisition threshold, there will be requirements for things such as, page limits or page counts, font sizes, font colors, text colors, different file types, and even the structure or outline of your offer, inclusive of agency-specific forms or attachments that require different signatures. Perhaps they want, the different sections numbered a certain way, right? Every solicitation is unique in that sense. And I've seen contractors take these compliance requirements too lightly and have entire proposals be tossed because they excluded one form or they had graphics in the wrong section. The last thing you want is to spend weeks working on a major proposal only for it to be disqualified for something so small. So it's my opinion that these finer requirements, like different text colors for different sections, for example, these requirements are likely included, in my opinion, as a minor test, so to speak. They're used to weed out contractors who, through their non-compliant submissions, mistakenly demonstrate that they don't follow instructions, they don't follow requirements exactly, because that's what you're doing in submitting a compliant proposal, right? You're showing to the agency that you can follow instructions and execute. So sometimes when I see these excessive formatting requirements, I wonder to myself, if they're used in part just to eliminate the offerers who might talk a nice solution but inadvertently demonstrate their struggle with compliance. So all that to say, proposal formatting and submission, another major compliance area to keep a laser focus on while you're working on these different projects here. Next up, we have pricing and cost information. First note is you want to avoid overpricing as well as underpricing. We talked last week about how underpricing can even be a fast track to proposal rejection. But aside from considering your competitive standing, it is often just the case that reasonable pricing is included in solicitations as a compliance requirement. Okay, and what you need to do for all of your offers is submit competitive pricing that you can justify. You want to break down your direct and indirect costs, and if required, even separate your profit fees and margins in there. And then with the market research you've performed, right, hopefully performed, be able to justify your rates. So once you've calculated all this information, you'll of course be required to communicate these figures and justifications in whatever unique format is required by the solicitation. You may need to use the supplied forms or different spreadsheets or whatever unique attachments are included in the solicitation package. Like I said, just to communicate this pricing and cost information. So whatever it may be, you strictly comply with solicitation instructions, regardless of the different formats being requested. Comply 100% and ensure your pricing aligns with whatever cost principles are under FAR Part 31 that are applicable to the contract. So FAR Part 31 is what has all those cost principles that dictate and apply to different government contracts depending on the contract type. Your solicitation will cite and specify which different sections in FAR Part 31 apply to that given solicitation, and it is your job as the bidding contractor to make sure you satisfy and meet those regulations. So again, FAR Part 31, a section of the FAR that you will become quite comfortable with. So that is the pricing and cost information. Next up here, let's take a look at security and cybersecurity requirements. These tend to be more applicable to certain industries and agencies, such as Department of Defense customers or IT services, but that's not exclusively the case, so I didn't want to skip over this here. For compliance requirements of this type, you may find that vendors are required to hold certain certifications. So you have, for example, the CMMC, or the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. It could also be the case that vendors need to demonstrate they comply internally with certain industry standards. You may have heard of the NIST, the National Institute of Standard and Technology. The NIST is often employed to ensure contractors know how to properly handle various degrees of classified information. And honestly, that's the motivation behind all of these security and cybersecurity requirements, is they're used to make sure vendors know how to handle government data, right? So then depending on the nature of the contract itself, it may also be required that your business hold a facility security clearance and that the personnel working on the contract similarly hold a security clearance. So just some examples here, you have the CMMC, the NIST, and an FCL clearance. And of course, whatever it may be with these different certifications and standards, it's important that you implement whatever associated policies, procedures, practices, are required before bidding on these sensitive contracts, right? So 9 times out of 10, these security and cybersecurity requirements, they're prerequisites. Again, they are not requirements you can satisfy once or after the contract goes live. A security clearance is a great example of that, right? You need that clearance before being able to start performing, before being able to access the site. So if you begin looking to bid and find these requirements are popping up regularly in your industry, start working on them independently of your own proposal work, right, on the back end. Get them figured out behind the scenes so that next time you encounter them, you're ready to go. You have that CMMC certification, or you have that approved process according to NIST standards. That way, when the requirements they do pop up, they don't preclude you from submitting a competitive offer. Okay, so here are our notes right here. Handle classified data, that's what they're used for, and make sure you incorporate these appropriate procedures before bidding. Okay, switching up to the next one. For this next item here, we're going to merge sort of 2 in 1 because they're both motivated by the same thing. These are used to determine what the government has going to be the responsibility of a given bidder. So you have responsibility requirements, and then you have past performance requirements, which again used to assess contractor responsibility. For past performance requirements specifically, you need to submit all of the requested and required contract details for prior contracts you've performed on. To ensure you're competitive with your past performance as well, though, not just compliant but competitive, you'll also want the references to be relevant and align in scope with the contract you're actively competing for. But to be truly compliant all around, though, ensure that whatever past performance references you are using meet the past performance requirements of the solicitation and that the prior contracts can be verified. Typically, past performance requirements often relate to how old the contract is and the size of the contract value. So a solicitation may require, for example, that all past performance references be within the last 3 to 5 years, and maybe let's say that they're valued at least $250,000. That's just a general example. So in that example, if your proposal response includes a contract that was just 1 year old, but the value was $100,000, right, that would be a non-compliant submission. So you need to watch those exact requirements for past performance references so that you ensure that you include only satisfactory references, of course. But when it comes to verification as well, each of your references need to include a point of contact that the agency could use to get additional information on how you performed on that contract, right? This is why actually, a point of contact is often required for your past performance references in your proposal, because the government agency does want to verify. And in my experience, they do. They do call, they do check. So these are the past performance components of this key compliance area, but there's also the responsibility component right here that we don't want to forget to mention. So each solicitation, they will specify its own set of requirements for this, but the requirements are often manifested in ways that you must demonstrate your financial and then operational stability. Those seem to be the primary categories. This might be an explanation for how you carry out certain tasks and procedures in your business, such as your accounting practices, and or it may include submitting documentation and proof of such things. Whatever the case, obviously, ensure you follow the instructions exactly. But to be prepared for such compliance requirements, I always recommend that you just, ensure your back office is organized, that all of your T's are crossed, all of your I's are dotted, and that you have a handle on your general business management operations so that you're prepared to prove your responsibility. Now, the last point I want to touch on today too is compliance requirements related to small business standards and subcontracting. If you're claiming you're a small business in your offer, right, you're designating that status. The opportunity is a small business set aside, for example. You always need to verify that your business meets the small business size standard for that opportunity. A really easy way to do this is just to visit the SBA's website. They have a size standard tool on there that will allow you to punch in a few key details, including, whatever NAICS code an opportunity is designated under, and it'll automatically confirm for you whether your business qualifies as small for that opportunity. But alternatively as well, if you're a large business, you need to pay close attention to whether the contract exceeds certain thresholds and necessitates that you include in your proposal a subcontracting plan. If a subcontracting plan is required, follow the requirements, for the plan closely so that you can not only comply in including a plan, but that the details and terms of said plan are also compliant. Here we go. Okay, so now we've got some final tips here. There we go. Like I mentioned in the beginning, there really is so much we could dive into when it comes to compliance, but keeping these 6 key compliance areas in mind that we've touched on today, ensure that in your proposal work, you are utilizing some process or procedures in place to track your compliance, that you're also incorporating the proper level of proposal reviews in your workflow, and that you stay updated on evolving government regulations, which with the new administration is also something we'll probably touch on, here very soon. But evolving government regulations. And then my last note would also be to start early, right? Ensure you're getting in on government opportunities and their solicitations early in their schedule so you can have sufficient time to satisfy all of the different requirements. All right. So moving forward, make sure you prioritize these key compliance areas in your proposal deliverables, and let me know in the comments what are some compliance requirements you've seen and learned from thus far in your proposal work and journey contracting. At this point, we've hit the Q&A portion of our live. So let me hop on here and see if we have any questions posted really quick. This is how we need to do it so that I can still share my screen. Okay. Not seeing any questions in the live. Totally fine there. Okay, so without any questions in the live today, we're just going to go ahead and wrap up here this mini training for you guys. Don't forget that we're uploading these mini trainings onto our new YouTube page, which we've just started and linked to the bio in our Facebook group. That way you guys can access them after Facebook starts to take them down with that new policy. It's going to be removing live videos, archiving them after 30 days. So we're going to go ahead and be posting them so you can revisit the trainings on YouTube going forward, and shoot me a direct message if you have any questions from here on out with your proposals and bidding efforts. And until then, we'll catch you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye.